Good evening. My name is Mario Mirable. I'm from Melbourne, where I am a member of the Caulfield Photographic Society. Thanks for having me down to Devonport tonight. I wish I could be there in person. In fact, I'd love to have jumped on the Spirit and just popped across Bass Strait, perhaps next time. We're going to start tonight with the colour section, so if you will bear with me. Okay, this is Alpine Mist. So really beautiful, moody image here. The depth that's given to it by the gradual fall off of detail in the image is really good, and it's also a wonderful, peaceful image. I think the strength of the image is probably above those rocks, though. I think that the softness and moodiness of the image is what really makes it work, and having those sort of hard rocks in the foreground just is a little bit too much of a contradiction to what the rest of the image is about. So I think just by sort of probably cropping 20% from the bottom of the image, it would first of all give the image more presence, because it would be, bigger and wider on the screen, give it a little bit more, and it would make more use of the strengths of the image. Tonight, Alpine Mist is accepted. Anne's pears. Yeah, wonderful color contrast here. You've got those brilliant bright reds complementing the greens in the stems of the jonquils. You've got those wonderful tones in the background working so well with those earthy tones in the timber of the box and the bench on which the arrangement sits. What I think is probably not working quite so well is that the light in this image just feels a little bit diffuse. I would have loved to see a little bit more directionality in it. I think it would have given it more depth and just made a bit more use of the shadows that could have then been available to us. So yeah, still a nice image though. Works well, nicely detailed, and good arrangement. Tonight, Anne's pears, highly commended. Balloon Sunrise Cappadocia. Um, yeah, this is an image with great balance and great flow. The way you've caught the arrangement of the balloons in the sky, and also with the presence of the moon there, all of that works really well. The size differential then gives us also another great sense of depth, and sort of adds depth to the image. The fact that you've caught one of the balloons in the middle of a flame out is good. It's sort of caught that light nicely inside the balloon. I would have liked to see it just darken the sky just a little bit. I think it would have given, especially that balloon with the flame going, a little bit more presence. But still a great image with a lot of sense of depth. 4 points. Sorry, highly commended. Banksia. Uh, Ericifolia, perhaps. Yeah. Um, yeah. So we've got good use of the spiral composition. You've got in nice and tight, and sort of got lots and lots of good detail. There's some good color there. I think perhaps if we're not going to get right in tight and sort of make this about the shape and texture of the flower, that it probably would have been better just a little bit looser in the composition, especially given that we've got some of that foliage around the outside. It would have given the banks here just a little bit more sense of place and sort of a what the image is. So I think if you want to get in and start making use of that detail, you need to get in even tighter. After that, perhaps just needs a little bit more room to breathe. The other observation I'd make about this is that while the vignette does draw our eye in, and after all, that is the purpose of a vignette, to draw our eye in. Where the vignette becomes noticeable, it tends to sort of probably have been a little bit overdone. So I would just back off a little bit on that vignetting. But other than that, there's some nice tones and nice light in the flower. Banksia accepted. Bath time. Um, Yeah, this is a nice little portrait here of the girl and her brother, presumably. A caring relationship is evident. There's some really nice connection there with the girl as well. What I think is not working quite so well is there's some odd texture creeping into the image, particularly visible in the boy's hair, but also throughout some of the other parts of the image. And it's not just texture, it's got some strange odd colors through it. Now, I'm not sure whether that's a result of your processing or whether this is a slide that perhaps has been digitized. It just is a little bit of a distraction. The other thing that's not working quite so well are the skin tones. And I think that there's some sort of magenta-ish tones creeping in, perhaps through the use of the direct flash, or perhaps even once again with your processing. I think that there's some nice things in this image, and I would love to see you reprocess it. Try and get rid of some of that funny color noise happening there, and also those odd skin tones. Perhaps also that sort of bright harsh highlight up in the top. Not accepted tonight, but it is a nice portrait of the of the pair. Perhaps go and rework it and try and get rid of some of those little distractions in there. Brown falcon. Okay, the falcon is nicely caught in mid-flight. He's looking straight down the barrel of the lens, so all of that working really well. I think tonally he needs to be a little bit more separated from the background. He is tending to blend into the background, so perhaps just maybe brightening the background a touch would allow him to stand out a bit. He's also not quite sharp, well, he might be sharp. It's sort of hard to tell. He's so small in the frame that you know the detail is just not there. So perhaps a slightly tighter framing might sort of bring out that detail. But I think you probably, if you just give it a little bit more sharpening, you're going to have an image that sort of really leaps out at you with some slightly tighter framing. But otherwise, a nice image. Brown falcon accepted. Brown honeyeater, lots of brown birds. Okay, so the honeyeater is nicely caught. He's probably just a little bit bright, a little bit overexposed, but there's still plenty of detail there. There's no blown highlights, so all of that's good. Nice catch light in the eye, and he's sort of, you've caught him on a plane of focus, so every bit of him is tack sharp. I like the way the focus sort of falls off. You've got that soft chain coming in, and then nice and sharp where he is, and then falls off again to the background. Unfortunately, that background, that big green pole in the background, is sort of a bit of an obvious imposition into the frame, and is a bit of a distraction. And I would love to see you. Look, I think, given that this is an open comp, not a nature comp, you could have a go at actually either just toning down the brightness, or perhaps even making it disappear completely and just sort of blending it in with the rest of the background. And I think that would then let the bird sort of really stand out and become the focus of the image. Brown honeyeater accepted. Me. Come, sit, relax, and tell me a story. Okay, so we've got a still life here with a bit of a difference. It's a still life on a much larger scale than the one we saw earlier with the pears and the flowers. I like the arrangement, and I like the sense of story. You really do feel invited to come in and actually sit down and pick up the book and start reading. I think the lighting, though, is a bit flat. You need to sort of work a little bit harder with the lighting here. Perhaps it's a bit more difficult than it is with a smaller tableau, but it's probably, you know, something where you need to sort of have a window light or something coming in, or a large flash, just to sort of try and create that extra mood. But I like the way you've got it set up. Perhaps a little bit too much space on the left and not enough space on the right. But other than that, it's a good idea that's working well. Come and sit, accepted. Conveyor junction. Yeah, look, some absolutely wonderful light in this. And fantastic use of line. It sort of almost feels like a roller coaster ride over here on the right side of the image. Beautiful use of the small aperture. We've got all of those little starburst effects. Yeah, just stunning color. The slow shutter that you've used has given us some nice soft reflections there, and we've got that lovely layered composition with the rocks in the foreground, the water, and then the industrial scene in the middle with that wonderful light. Perhaps I'd be inclined to perhaps just take a little bit of the sky off, but that's a minor quibble because this is a really striking image that really stands out. Conveyor junction, and on a country quilt. Yeah, lovely soft rolling landscape. Once again, good use of the layering that you've got available to you, and some nice lines as well going here and there. What's not working quite so well for you is the light. Obviously, a heavily overcast day, very flat lighting, which is tending to rob you of some of the depth in the image. I would love to see you come back to this place and yeah, just perhaps get in exactly the same spot and get there early in the morning where you've got some low slanting light coming in and maybe if you're lucky a little bit of a touch of mist to really give you that moody effect. Composition is good. I like the magic that you've worked with the sky to get a little bit of drama there, but the light is just unfortunately working against you on this particular occasion. Accepted tonight. Dawn at the marina. Yeah, nice use of the reflections, a good composition in terms of the balance between the boats and and the reflections. Um, the lights on the Balti Bridge there in the background add a nice touch and sort of give some colour to what is an otherwise fairly drab grey day. It's clear that Melbourne's weather wasn't cooperating with you when you were visiting. Um, it's a busy composition, but it does tell the story of the marina, and the light in the background is a nice touch as well. Tonight, the one at the marina is accepted. Flame robin. Okay, so the bird is nicely perched. He's not quite crisp, and I suspect I don't think it's a focus issue. I think you've probably just had to sort of crop quite a bit down to sort of get him to fill the frame, and he is filling the frame nicely. Um, for a flame robin, he does feel a bit washed out, so perhaps just pull the brightness down a touch. The background, though, nice and soft, no problem with no competition at all with the bird. He does stand out nicely against that, but I would just say pull the brightness down a bit, maybe try and get a little bit more sharpness and try and pull out a bit of those detail in the feathers. Tonight, flame robin is accepted. Forest pink robin. Now this is a stunning portrait of this bird. You've obviously gotten in really close because you need to get close to a bird with some pretty good equipment probably to get that level of detail. Nice catch light in the eye. The background is soft and beautiful, but what really is the strength of this image is that wonderful detail and wonderful color that you've found in the bird. Um, Never easy to get close to these birds, or to any birds really. But yeah, a beautiful job, really well done. If anything, I would basically try perhaps to find a little bit more light around the eye. But other than that, a stunning bird portrait. Pink forest pink robin tonight gets an honour. Ghost fungi. Um, yeah, really interesting image here. This is not something that I've ever seen, but you've done really well. You've gotten out in the night, you've gotten down close to the ground, and you've captured a really stark image of this curious plant. Um, Wonderful use of the light here, wonderful line as well. The composition filling the frame nicely. I would pull down the brightness here on that foliage bottom left just to give the more a little bit more prominence to the fungi. But other than that, it's been really well captured. An unusual plant that sort of tells a story of its own. Nicely done tonight. Highly commended. Great cormorant. Um, yes, nice strong pose of the bird, I think. And I like the line that you've got, that line sort of coming down through the rock and then flowing up through the bird, and you've got that little bit of colour right in the eye, that sort of bright, vibrant turquoise that really does jump out. He doesn't look to be quite sharp. I would probably also just take a little bit off the top. You don't really need all that space, but he is working quite well. I mean, the line and the composition and the pose and the strength of the bird are all quite evident. Tonight, Great Cormorant is accepted. Hawley Rock Arty. Okay, so I like this composition here of the rocks. A nice, simple, straight line right through the middle. I don't mind that it's sort of, in the middle of the image. I still think the image feels quite balanced. What I don't think is working quite so well is the treatment. Now, I'm not sure whether the title suggests, when it says Hawley Rock Arty, that you are trying to give it some sort of a different interpretation, a different process. To me, it sort of feels a bit like you've tried to sort of pull highlights down, and it's given it that muddy feel. Um, the tonal, what I'm finding here is that the tonal separation between the foreground and the background and the rocks is just not there, and it's all feeling a bit mushy, which is a shame because there's some nice detail in the rocks and the composition is working quite well. The long shutter to sort of smooth the water there in the foreground also working quite well. So, look, I've given it a non-acceptance tonight because I think that with a little bit of work, this could be made into quite a strong and simple and elegant landscape. But if I've sort of mistaken your intentions in terms of the processing, my apologies. But I think that there is some work here that could sort of really make it pop a bit better. Inspecting the relics. Yeah, look, I thought the composition of this image was really good. Yeah, you've got that wonderful frame within frame effect going on there. You've got some fantastic textures here in the old boiler or whatever it is, and sort of some nice light in the background. I would have loved to see just a little bit more connection or interaction with the subjects there that are framed within that circle. And perhaps even just pulling in the composition a little bit, getting in a little bit closer and sort of making more of them because they are an interesting part of the composition. But what's really lacking is they just feel like they're sort of out of the action with their backs to us, engaged in whatever it is that they are, even if they were sort of just perhaps facing each other or sort of facing us and sort of feeling a little bit more part of the image. Still, nice image with good composition. Tonight it's an acceptance. Just me and my camera. Yeah, I really like the composition of this image, the use of symmetry, the way you've positioned yourself and perhaps even your subject exactly in the middle of the bridge. Lovely light in the background. And a great sense of story. You can sort of feel like this young photographer is on their, beginning their photographic journey, sort of looking to the future, looking for the for where the next challenge is going to lie. So I think, from the perspective of the composition and the story, it just really, really works. And there's this great sense that we are on this journey with the young girl. Yeah, excellent image. Merit tonight. Liffey River Cascade. I think the texture and detail here in the water flowing over the rocks is really, really nice. You've resisted the temptation to use that really slow shutter speed and create the milky water. And so from that perspective, you've got great detail and great sense of motion. I think that bright rock over on on the left hand side, sorry, is just a little bit of a distraction because it doesn't really feel at one with the rest of the image. I think you could probably easily just lose that over there and just sort of make the image more, almost come up perhaps with a square crop, and then you've got this sort of focus on this on the rocks and the river where you want it to be. The other thing that I think is also it looks a little bit like there's some sharpening artifacts happening, like you've sort of just tried to push the sharpening just a bit too hard. I think you could sort of pull that back and lose that light over there, or even just even if you toned it down, that would help. Tonight, Liffey River Cascade is an acceptance. Niagara Falls. Um, yeah, great sense of motion here. We've got the water plummeting over the falls, and then that huge plume coming up and then flowing towards us, and you can sort of feel like everything sort of moving out of the frame towards the viewer. Even though you've got some nice detail there in the sky, it is a bit dark and probably a little bit not so much what you want in the image. And I would be inclined to just make it even more panoramic than it is, and lose that top section, and that then brings more prominence to where you want our eye to be, which is on this power of the water flowing over the precipice and into the void. So yeah, nice image from that perspective. So yeah, just sort of make it more about the water than about the sky. At the moment, you've got a 50-50 balance. I think the sky is not as interesting as the water, so let's just sort of try and create more of a focus on the water itself. Tonight, an acceptance. Old Hornibrook Bridge. Beautiful light. I mean, this really is an image all about the light. And the structure here in the foreground just is an interesting adjunct to it. Good use of the reflection, the slightly slow shutter to smooth the water and make more of that reflection works well. I would have loved to see you, if you could, and I don't know that you could, just get a little bit higher to give the top of the bridge and the whole bridge as a whole a little bit more separation from that land in the background, and that would have then given it a little bit more of a layered effect, which would have improved I think the presence of the image. Old Hornibrook Bridge is accepted. Old Penstock. Yeah, look, I don't know if this is part of the hydro system down in Tasmania, but it's a really, I mean, it looks, if it is, it's probably, mid 20th century, but this to me looks like something quite archaic, because the timber construction, these old metal ties, really quite interesting, and I would have loved to see make a little bit more of that, perhaps by just sort of taking a slightly wider view, stepping a little bit wider to the side so that you've got a little bit more separation between these components. I would have also liked to see the one nearest the camera in focus, perhaps even use a bit of focus stacking to increase your depth of field. But yeah, a little bit more separation between those ties, I think, would have really lent it a little bit more interest. But I think it's still a strong image as it is tonight. An acceptance. P-51 Mustang. Yeah, probably taken from another plane. Just an absolutely beautiful image of this old World War II fighter. Nice sky as well, sort of soft clouds, wispy clouds. Just the right shutter speed that you've used, and perhaps just a little bit too fast, but you have at least introduced a little bit of blur into the prop there to give it that sense of rotation. We can see the pilot, so there's sort of nice clarity in the canopy. Perhaps would have, if you'd given it a little bit more room to fly, and it might have been a little bit better. But even so, it's still a beautiful image, nice and detailed, a beautiful portrait of this classic fighter. Tonight, a merit. Pathway to Hobbiton. Okay, nice S curve here going into the image, creating that sense of movement, that sense of depth. I felt that the greens felt a little bit overcooked. Perhaps the image was overexposed. to start with, and that could possibly, sort of even be suggested by the brightness of the sky there, and you've tried to pull it down, and it's sort of robbed it of a little bit of its vibrance. But still, I like the composition. I would be inclined to sort of lose that top part of the sky and perhaps even a little bit right, that little bit of roof line there on the left. And then you've got these two lanterns creating a nice sense of balance on either side of the path. So from that compositional perspective, it's working quite well. I think with a little bit of work, it could be even stronger. And maybe review your processing if it is a little bit overexposed. Play a little bit more to try and bring a bit more vibrance back into those greens. As it is, that they're sort of looking a bit sad and tired. But yeah, still a nice image from a compositional perspective tonight, and acceptance for Pathway to Hobbiton. Red. Yeah, nice architectural study here. It's a shame that you didn't bring your chainsaw so that you could cut that tree down. But even so, and it's also a shame that you couldn't wait long enough for someone to walk down these stairs. I think I know where these are. These are in Docklands, I think. So yeah, a nice architectural study using repetition and color and those good strong diagonals. the, while you have got a person there to give it a sense of scale, the person really, I don't think in this case, is contributing all that much to the image. She sort of feels a little bit out of it, but still, it's a nice architectural study making good use of form and color. Tonight, highly commended. Red pears. Okay, so this to me feels like it could have been made by the same photographer as the first image with the pears, or perhaps there was a special on pears. Either way, I think this one is a much stronger image. I think the arrangement is simpler. It's more elegant. It's more focused. You've got this nice balance here between three discrete objects almost. You've got the first set of pairs, the vase, and then the other pair. Nice use of reflections as well. But I think what works better in this one is the lighting, and the lighting is more directional. It's giving the whole image a lot more sense of depth. And it's beautifully photographed. Everything is lovely and crisp. The background works well, and the composition and arrangement of your objects is also very good. Tonight, Red Pears gets an honour. Red Water Creek Falls. Okay, so there's some lovely form and lovely motion, lovely detail in that waterfall at the back, and then it sort of flows out, and the image, I think, tends to lose its way a little bit after that waterfall. The waterfall really is the strength of the image, and I think you need to get in closer to make more of that. Now, the image does feel a bit soft. Now, I think you can get away with it in the waterfall, because it is, after all, a long exposure. Everything's meant to be a bit soft, but other than that, it's sort of um, the area around it is just getting a little bit lost. I love the detail and the form and the light on that waterfall. So I think you should try and get in a bit closer, make a little bit more of that, because I think that's the strength of this image. So have a play with it, see if you can come up with something that speaks more about the waterfall itself. Tonight, an acceptance. Sacred Kingfisher. Okay, another beautiful bird portrait here. Absolute stunning detail, and we've got that element of animal behaviour here. In it's been hunting and it's caught something that looks like a little freshwater crayfish of some sort. Beautiful catchlight in the eye. The light is beautiful. The background is superb. And yeah, just another very strong portrait of a beautiful bird. Nicely done tonight, a merit. Sheffield's Mountain. Okay, I think this works really well, this landscape, in terms of the play of light and shadow. With the light sort of coming through, illuminating parts of the landscape, other parts being in shadow, that strong form of the mountain against the sky. I'm not too sure that this rusty old gate in the foreground is really helping the image a lot. So I suppose it does give a leading line into the image. I do like that little touch of the three little birds. Now, tonight I'm not going to accept it, because I think you really need to pay a little bit more attention to your sizing. This is clearly not been sized correctly, and it's losing impact because it's quite small on the screen. If I have a look at the resolution of this, it's, I don't know, it's probably 1080 on the long axis. So you need to sort of pay more attention. So I think if you take this image, size it correctly, suddenly it'll be bigger on the screen, it will have more impact, right? So I'll give you another opportunity to put it in by not accepting it tonight, but I still think it's a good image. Springtime on the river. Yeah, bright, vibrant image really jumps off the screen. I like the sort of almost middle line of a horizon, which gives the image, I think, quite good balance. Sometimes people say you should never have your horizon line, and this isn't really a horizon line, but you know what I mean, across the middle. But sometimes it just works, and I think in this case it does work quite well. I think the image is probably just a little bit too busy. I don't know if this sort of log over on the left, on the right hand side is really adding anything. But I would have loved to see you sort of just pick something in all this vibrant scene and just sort of try and focus in on that. Sometimes just, you know, a little bit too much detail is just a little bit too much. And I think in this case, if you'd focused on something, perhaps the right half, that nice group of three trees there together, you would have had a really stunning composition. Tonight, springtime on the river is an acceptance. Sunset. Um, Yeah, I like the balance here. You've got the clouds in the sky balancing the rocks, and so you've got this sort of almost interplay because the clouds are on the left, most of the rocks are on the left, and so you've got that nice balance going on. I think as a sunset shot, it just feels a little bit too bright. And I think the brightness is also toning down the vibrance of the colors in the sky. I think you could probably give those a little bit of a push and also just deepen the shadows, create more of that sense of sunset. But compositionally and tonally, it's really nice. You've chosen a slow shutter speed, which has softened the water, but not to the extent where you've lost that sense of motion. So you can still feel the water lapping in against the shore. A nice image, which is accepted tonight. Sunset in the Gums. Okay, I think that this is a stunning composition, and you've positioned yourself beautifully to get that sun setting down there in the fork of the tree. I think your processing is not quite right. It does feel a little bit muddy, but it's saved by the composition, that balance between the two trees supporting that middle tree and that wonderful capture of the sun setting, the setting disk of the sun there, caught between the horns of that tree there in the middle. And so compositionally very, very strong. Perhaps processing wise a little bit off, but still a striking image tonight, highly commended. Survivor. Um, my first thought on this image was that it felt very much like a low angle shot of a person dancing. You get that sense of the arms in the air, the sort of, you know, the swaying of the body and whatever. So a really interesting perspective on this tree study. Colors, striking and strong, contrasting nicely the warm tones on the trunk and the cooler tones in the sky. Maybe just pull that sort of bright highlight over on the left down a little bit. But yeah, look, compositionally, really, really nice. I don't know whether you could have kicked away that little log there on the bottom left. That would have made it a bit smoother, but I still think it works really well in terms of this sense of flow and this feeling of the trees sort of dancing to the rhythm of the bush. Survivor, highly commended. Synchronized flying. Um, yeah, wonderful, wonderful warm tones on the water. Lovely soft feel to it. The ripple and the highlights and the shadows sort of just working beautifully together. And the timing to catch these two birds juxtaposed the way you have. Now, I suspect that with the use of a long lens, these birds are not quite as close as they look, but nevertheless, the perception is that they are sort of sitting right on top of each other. Lovely synchronicity between them. You can see both their heads there. They're not tack sharp, but I think that we can overlook that because the composition and the moment that you've captured works so well. So tonight, synchronized flying, highly commended. Wild and windy. Yeah, interesting here that we've got a long exposure in sort of the middle of the day, so probably a very heavy neutral density filter used here to sort of slow the shutter speed down enough that you've got that sense of movement there. I like the use of that slow shutter has really sort of created that sense of motion both in the grasses here in the foreground and in the waves. But I think compositionally you needed to sort of probably just shift your sort of turn yourself a little bit to the right because that big chunk of bare ground there in the foreground really isn't helping the image. So I think a little bit more of the of the sea, more sort of maybe even getting in a little bit closer to these grasses in the foreground would have really created that sense of wild weather. But yeah, interesting use of technique. Tonight accepted. Winter Wonderland. Yeah, wonderful postcard image. This, I mean, it's almost we're heading into the Christmas season, and this really is a very very Christmassy, even though it's not really an Australian Christmas, but it is still a very very Christmassy feeling traditional image. Great use of the framing here in the foreground with these trees in the foreground, and the way you've managed to sort of position yourself to get the whole of the fence, creating yet another frame for the house itself. Trees in the background once again, creating part of this nice circular frame here for all round frame here for this house. Classic little subject, very well photographed, nicely done, highly commended. Yep, apparently it's art. Well, um, a lot of people who come to Hosier Lane will sit there and take pictures of the art. Now you've managed to get the art in, but you've also created an image which is not necessarily about the art itself. And so that low camera angle where it looks like you've put your camera right down on the ground, interesting technique. So this has become all about the environment rather than the actual paintings on the wall. Creating that low camera angle has created an interesting canyon effect here. So it's a striking image. The sort of strong contrast, the use of color works well. And that low camera angle has really created a different perspective on something that we've probably seen quite a bit of. So yeah, well done. Trying something different works well. Tonight, highly commended. And that is the end of our color section. We'll be carrying on soon with the monochrome section. Thank you for your attention and see you again soon. Good evening again. We'll now be having a look at the monochrome images. Monochrome is interesting in that there's more to monochrome than just taking the color out of an image. Because most of us see in color and we're used to dealing with color, we have to change our frame of reference when we're looking at monochrome images and likewise as photographers when we're preparing them. So you need to pay attention to, in particular, your tonal range, because where you've got color to convey meaning, story, depth in a color image, when you're dealing with a monochrome image, all of that is taken away and we have to start playing with levels of tone. And there are really only two colors. I mean, you've got black and you've got white. And then in between there, you've got subtle variations. And so while not every black and white image needs to have that full tonal range, although I have heard it said that it does, it doesn't really have to. Depends very much on the image. We need to be aware of how we're telling our story using those subtleties of tone. So keeping that in mind, we will start having a look at your images. Okay, so we start with Biker's Day Out. Okay, so we've got Biker's Day Out. Now this is a really good portrait of the bike, I think. I like the way it sort of really thrusts itself into the frame. What I think is probably a little less engaging are the couple there in the background. Um, they're just sort of, it would have been nice to sort of have something that sort of related to them actually on their day out rather than just sort of sitting there playing with their phones having a drink. And I just thought that lack of engagement, that lack of story element, um, just took the picture down a notch or two. But still, if you're into bikes, it's a really nice image of the bike. And tonight, Biker's Day Out is accepted. Evasive action. Yeah, no, look, this is an interesting in that it's hard to sort of really put any frame of reference about what is actually happening. The I don't know a lot about jet fighters, modern jet fighters, and I'm not sure what that sort of bright flash of light sort of coming through there, whether that's some sort of electronic countermeasure or something that it's actually throwing out there. What I do think works well with this image is that it does have that sense of the plane sort of thrusting away at great speed. We can see a little bit of trails of vapor or whatever it is coming out through the tail jets there. Um, I thought that this really was one of those things where you need to play a little bit more with your tonal range. Um, and what I'm sort of seeing here is that the tonal range is fairly flat. There's not a sort of great deal of difference there between the plane and the sky. They're sort of starting to blend together a little bit, and I'd just like to see a little bit more separation. But I do like the way the plane is sort of thrusting into the air, and sort of you do feel that sense of speed and acceleration. Evasive action tonight is accepted. Great cormorant. Yes, look, this certainly is a great cormorant. Um, look, we've had a number of very good bird portraits tonight, and I think that this is just another one in the same vein. Fantastic composition. Once again, the background is beautifully handled. The bird in a really strong dynamic pose, the great leading line from the branch that it's sitting on, sort of dragging us and leading us into the picture. And there's the bird, as I say, with this nice strong dynamic pose, this strong L-shaped compositional element. Um, yeah, look, it's absolutely stunning in terms of its tonality, its detail, and its composition. And tonight, Great Cormorant receives an honour. Happy face. Yeah, look, a cheery, happy portrait. Um, looks quite a character here. We've got good engagement and a good facial expression. Um, I feel that you've probably sort of tried to lift the shadows on the face, that the face was probably in shadow given where the light appears to be coming from. That's sort of left a little bit of noise happening there, which look is not too bad a thing. I mean, it's part and parcel of what we deal with. We used to accept grain in film days, and now noise, is not necessarily, as long as it's not um, too obvious or too offensive, then we can live with it. Here, though, it's once again his sort of his face is sort of just that mid grey. I would have liked to see it just brightened a little bit more, and that's not to say just dodging a bit more. I would just take the white point on the facial area up a bit, and perhaps even just vignette it a bit to sort of draw our attention into his face, and maybe sort of reduce the impact of that chainmail fence there, that chain link fence there that's behind him. But yeah, look, it's a good character portrait of of an engaging personality tonight. Happy face is accepted. Leanne, um, I thought that this was a really good frame within a frame. Um, uh, um, Composition. I like the sort of two parts to the frame within the frame, the empty one and then the one filled with the subject. Really nice exercise in texture, although I think with a little bit more boost to the contrast, you could actually lift the impact of that texture. Um, what I thought just let the image down just a little bit is that um, Leanne, what we've got with Leanne is a very pleasant, smiley portrait, but it would have been, I think, if you'd taken some thought in trying to create a pose which related more to the frame. So we've got this old house with this sort of black window. Um, I would have liked just to see something that had a little bit more dramatic impact that then would have worked better with the scene that you found and created. Nevertheless, still a good exercise in frame within a frame, and Leanne is highly commended. Missing nut. Yeah, look, a very, very simple and well seen, almost abstract composition here. The variations in level, the and the missing nut on the tall one, I think it just makes for, an interesting observational exercise. Um, Texturally, the detail on the of the rusty bolts is well captured. Um, yeah, I just thought it was a really interesting bit of observation and creating something, a simple composition that does work quite well. Yeah, excellent. Highly commended. Mossy Forest. Yes, so much detail here, so much detail, and the monochrome conversion beautifully well handled. We've got some really deep blacks and some almost white whites, and pretty much everything in between. Everything is sharp, it's detailed, and there's this real sense of flow in capturing this tangle of mossy wood. Um, it just it presents almost an impenetrable barrier to us as we're looking at the image. Um, it's and it just it's got real presence. I mean, the contrast in highlight and shadows has created a real three-dimensionality, as well as the depth of the branches sort of going back. So your plane of focus is relatively narrow, and as the plane of focus drops off, it creates an added sense of depth. Look, a really strong image. As I said, very, very busy, but also very, very engaging. Mossy Forest is a merit tonight. New Holland Honey Eater. Okay, so a good portrait of the honey eater, a good pose, nice use of the reflection, and a good composition here with the log also forming part of the reflection and creating a leading line. This is one where I thought you needed to go back and just sort of play a little bit more with the contrast. There needs to be a little bit more separation between your highlights and shadows, and you can do that simply with adding contrast. Contrast will do that, but in a somewhat um, um, crude manner, if I can say. If you've got tools like Photoshop or Lightroom, you can start playing with your black point, your white point, your highlights, and your shadows all individually, and moving those around will create an additional sense of depth. It will deepen the blacks, it will highlight the whites, and it will give the bird a little bit more presence. Perhaps a little bit of a crop from the right. Doesn't need, I think, that much room to look into. But other than that, compositionally good. But I think it could be improved with a little bit of playing around with the tonality. So New Holland Honey Eater is accepted. Playtime. Um, Pleasant portrait of the cat. He looks like he's having a good time. The tonality is good. I don't know whether or not you could have perhaps played around with your angle or even just sort of waited a bit so that we didn't have that back leg imposing and perhaps even getting in a little bit closer. But still, it's a nice, sharp image, a pleasant portrait of the cat, and who looks, very relaxed. And this is another one where, as I say, just pay attention to your sizing, just make it that little bit bigger, and it will have a little bit more presence. Tonight, playtime is accepted. River View. Yeah, really nice, detail here, especially in the foreground. It sort of tails off a bit as the mist comes into the background, but there's real sense of depth. Great composition. We've got all of these triangular elements sort of dragging us into a vanishing point, pretty much in the center of the image. I would suggest that you probably don't need that much sky. In fact, I would sort of crop it off to just above the level of that protruding branch. Get rid of some of those highlights, and that will help keep our attention right here in the center where we've got all of these compositional elements, these triangles sort of dragging us into the image. So have a play around with that. That sort of highlight up the top is a little bit, I think, too glaring, and it doesn't really sit well with the rest of the mood of the image. But other than that, it's a great shot, and Riverview is highly commended. Sad sack. Yeah, I spent a lot of time with this one trying to figure out exactly what was going on. And from that perspective, I would have liked to see a sort of slightly wider shot to give me a little bit more context of what is happening. But nevertheless, I think as a character street portrait, I think it works well. The background, even though it's quite busy, has been well handled and thrown well out of focus. Good shallow depth of field. So perhaps just sort of getting in a little bit closer to him, that would remove some of those background distractions. But even so, I still think that this works as a something, a thought-provoking image, which sort of leaves you wondering, makes you think about what's going on and what this guy's story is. Tonight, Sad Sack is highly commended. Sophie. Okay, so a pleasant, engaging portrait. We've got sort of Sophie, sort of engaging with us, or with you as the photographer, and consequently with us as the viewers. I thought that this one here was one where you needed to start really thinking about how you are doing your black and white conversions, and especially with something like a close-up facial portrait, where your tones need to sort of, I mean, if this was in color, we would see the skin tones of Sophie's skin, but what we've got now is something where we've got just this sort of grey pallor, and it feels very, very flat. I think that there is material here that you could work with, and I would love to see you take this away and play around, especially with the tones on Sophie's face, because it really is a very, very engaging portrait. But the sort of greyish, flattish grey tones that we've got that sort of pervade the image around her face just sort of tend to leave it feeling a little bit lacking. So take it, have a play with those shadows and highlights, especially around the face and especially around those gorgeous eyes, and I think you'll have a much stronger image. And so I've chosen not to accept Sophie tonight, and give you a chance to sort of go back and have a nice play with it and see if you can come up with something that works a little bit better. Stairway. Right, intriguing image this. A great sense of journey and movement. We're sort of standing at the bottom of the stairs, and we can feel ourselves being drawn up them. The figures at the top create a little bit of an air of mystery. Another one where I think you really need to sort of think about your tonality, because it does feel very flat and grey. So I'd sort of be inclined to sort of think about, okay, how could we improve this? And really, this is an image which I think calls for shadows, because here we've got a sense of mystery, we've got a sense of uncertainty as to what is going on and what those figures at the top of the staircase are. So adding shadows in will accentuate that sense of mystery, sort of bring the tones down, certainly around the top of the staircase and perhaps around the side as well. So interesting image, I think, with some potential there. But tonight it's accepted. The dark web. Okay, so you've done well to capture the light coming through, and the light coming through the the web has really highlighted against a completely black background. Um, the problem here is that nothing, virtually nothing, is in focus, and I think also that whatever this obstruction across the top is also a little bit of a distraction, and it would have been nice to sort of see a little bit more of the web. Um, Look, I've chosen not to accept it tonight because I think technically it really needed a little bit more thought and work in terms of trying to get the web in focus, and not always easy to do because apart from anything else, if there's any sort of a breeze, they do tend to move around, and they're difficult things for the camera to focus on. But try manual focus. That can help sometimes. Don't leave it all to the camera. Sort of take control of the camera. Give it another go. I think that it's the sort of image that's got a lot of impact if done right, but not accepted tonight. The Warlocks. Yeah, nice, intriguing portrait. The relationship between the girl and her horse is evident. I think that there's sort of a lot of sort of an air of mystery about the whole thing. So once again, it's one of those costume setups that I think really can make some intriguing portraits. What I think it does need is a bit of a vignette, sort of just to sort of lessen the even though the background is completely out of focus, I think it's still sort of a reasonably bright. And I think just putting a little vignette on it will sort of tend to drag our attention in towards the center of the of the image where the girl and a horse their faces are. But nicely composed, nicely posed, and a very, very engaging subject there with the girl with those piercing eyes. Tonight, the Warlocks gets a merit. Tied up safely. Um, yeah, very, very busy image. Difficult lighting conditions, which I think you've handled really well. There's nothing that's sort of particularly blown out or sort of lost in deep shadow. So a difficult lighting condition that you've handled really well. The question that you've got to ask yourself when you're choosing an image like this is, what is your subject? Now, sometimes we can get away with having a busy image without a subject if the image is sort of intriguing enough. And if you think back to the mossy forest, all right, there was really no subject there apart from the whole image, but it had such drama and impact. Here, you've got to sort of start to try and work with what you've been given to try and create that drama and impact. And here, there's no immediate subject, right, that is creating that impact and drama. So what you've got to do sometimes is think about, okay, how do I take this scene and turn it into something a little bit more engaging? And oftentimes that is getting in closer and choosing a subject to frame tightly. And that can really lend itself to some quite nicely composed details. But I think that today the image, while it's been well photographed, just sort of lacks that degree of engagement that sort of takes us along for the ride. Tonight accepted. Turkey Necropolis. Yeah, once again, good use of the frame within a frame. I think that I would have liked to see just get in a little bit closer and work with that scene there in the central window, um, which I think has got some really nice elements to it. The curve of the stone bridge, the little stone structure there in the foreground, and the sort of scenery, landscape scenery in the background. So some nice variation, nice detail there. So I think that if you got in, perhaps took off the right side, sort of up to close with that central arch. I think there's some nice texture and detail there, leading us out on the left. The image would probably work a little bit better. Perhaps even sort of taking some of this perspective distortion, often sort of trying to get your lines a little bit straighter, which once again you can do. You've probably got a little bit too much to completely remove, but I think if you sort of straighten it up a little bit, it might sort of give it a little bit more presence and just take a little bit off the right. But that scene that you've captured there through the central window there is working really well. Tonight, highly commended. Wistful. Okay, so I think that this is an excellent character portrait. Really nicely posed, very thoughtful. The background is beautifully handled. What is not working so well, once again, is your tonality. This is one that I thought was such an engaging portrait that I actually had a bit of a play around with it myself, and with just a few adjustments, suddenly it really, really started to pop. Tonight, I'm going to not accept it, because I think with a little bit of work on this, and once again, it comes down to playing with your black point, your white point, shadows and highlights, and perhaps just even a little bit more of a vignette around her, because she is a beautiful model, well posed, and a well composed image that I think is just let down a little bit by the processing. So I'm going to choose not to accept it, which I'm told gives you another chance to have a play with it, have another go in another comp. And that takes us to the end of the monochromes. So thank you again for having me down to Devonport. I have got a little bit of a presentation, which I believe you will be shown after this. So yeah, have a pleasant evening, and thanks again.